away from potential diplomacy. Israeli military says it has begun a wave of strikes against dozens of surface-to-surface missile targets in western Iran. This comes after Iran launched missiles to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem this evening. A potential further escalation. Joining us to discuss that is Berzin Wagmar from the Centre for Iranian Studies, the SOAS University of London. Berzin is also joining us from London. Thank you ever so much for being here. That news that further Israeli strikes is not a surprise, but targeting surface-to-surface missiles, how significant is that in the escalations that are ongoing, and how might it limit further escalations, given that it could cripple some of Iran's ability to strike Israel?
It is absolutely imperative that Jerusalem continues so relentlessly and audaciously, and that what we have seen in the last 2 days is that Prime Minister Netanyahu's so-called alarmist brinksmanship was no mere fiction, but something that was held all along and has come to pass. Consider the fact that DNI Tulsi Gabbard, in her Senate intelligence hearings, actually went on record to state that there is no credible evidence of Iran actively pursuing nuclear weapons, which is absolute nonsense, given the fact that on the 31st of May, the IAEA report mentioned that Tehran has actually enriched up to 60% weapons-grade uranium and is in possession of 400 plus kilos of uranium as such, which would be enough to mount on 10 nuclear warheads if that it were to break out and pursue that completely unfettered. In so doing, it is obviously violating the NPT, and that Iran stands, quite frankly, in flagrant violation of everything that it has stood for and given to understand so long hitherto. And in defiance of the IAEA, much before what has just happened in this most recent escalation, the enrichment facility at Fordo had been expanded, and 3 more facilities had also come on the map, including Varamin, which is just southeast near Tehran International Airport, Varamin Prefecture, and Turkuzabad as another ballistic missile site. So it is important that Israel does this, and 2 things stem from that. You see, it's entirely useful that Iran is desperate and continues this scattergun approach, which indeed it is doing. And of course, in that, it is taking out Jewish lives because it is not targeting Israeli military or official establishment sites. It is wantonly, maliciously targeting Jews, because obviously eliminating the Jewish state has been part of Tehran's raison d'etre since 1979 and the Islamic Revolution. Make no mistake about that. So that is what we see in the difference of targets in this 1,200-mile difference between Jerusalem and Tehran, and also in a bid that this would deplete Iran's stock, which indeed is happening. Not to mention that they do have these Shahid 136 drones which are being deployed and which they've shared with Russia to decimate Ukraine, as we know. And all in all, that will continue. But Israel's triple defense system has worked flawlessly so far and will continue to do so, including the anti-missile THAAD batteries that they have procured from DC last year. Not to mention the Iron Dome. So that has helped and kept fatalities in Israel quite low for now.
Yes, and Berzin, of course, we know that this will be a key part of discussions at the G7 summit. We've heard that a joint statement will be released on the tensions from the countries at this G7 meeting and summit that is taking place in Alberta, Canada. How will that go about, and how significant is it that the G7 in this moment, given that the tensions are so new, are strong with their messaging and united with their messaging, given the wider geopolitical ramifications that this could have?
I can best answer it like this. Would you mind momentarily forgetting the G7 and look at the Islamic world and the Arab world at that? Not a pipsqueak. If anything, Jerusalem has picked up the slack and is doing the dirty work for the Arab world, particularly the GCC states, who must be breathing a sigh of relief to see all these Iranians down like 9 pins. All of them part of this murderous terror exporting regime since '79. and who were a constant and present danger to all the GCC states, all of who have suffered in the last 40 plus years from Tehran's proxies and funding of, say, hijackings, seditious movements in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and elsewhere, Shia irredentist movements and the like, not to mention the Arab world at large too, that is the non-GCC Arab world. None of them are, in the name of Islamic unity, are coming to Iran's aid or even making any blandishments. You can expect the West, like the Japanese Prime Minister has actually gone on record to state that Israel's actions are intolerable, quote unquote. That may be so, but Israel is undertaking the dirty work for everyone. And even if some leaders don't have the gumption to admit it, that may be so because Trump doesn't want to invite the ire of Tehran.
Bazin, sorry to cut you off. We do have some more breaking news to bring you on this topic. I will come back to you. The United States Embassy in Iraq has issued a security alert warning of possible attacks on locations frequented by Americans. This alert comes amid rising tensions between Israel and Iran and growing regional unrest. The embassy in Baghdad stated it is aware of an increased risk of violence targeting US businesses and spots commonly visited by American citizens. It has urged all US nationals to avoid public gatherings and areas frequented by foreigners. This comes as Iraqi activists have called for a massive protest near the Green Zone, home to the US Embassy, demanding the mission's closure and the immediate exit of diplomatic staff. Berzine, coming back to you, a huge development there. We, of course, saw Donald Trump withdraw staff from several bases ahead of the strikes from Israel. We now understand from information following those initial attacks on Friday that the US were aware that potentially a preemptive move to the preemptive strikes, but this, a risk for US personnel in the Middle East. What is the ramifications of that, given that we know Donald Trump has already warned if strikes are taken against US personnel, US ships in the region, it will have huge consequences. Bezin, your thoughts?
Well, Tehran will invite Trump's flak, who has been holding his hand hitherto. The security directive issued for the US Embassy Baghdad comes on the heels of that issued for the US Embassy Manama, Bahrain as well, 3 days ago. So Iran is simply trying to resurrect some of its proxies. And let's face it, parts of Iraq are a client state of Iran and has been so since 2003. The Shia militias, the Kataib and the Ashaib al-Ansar and the others who are on Tehran's payroll, they are being whipped up into psyching the situation and therefore calling for these protests, not which are necessarily welcomed by all Iraqis, least of all Sunni Iraqis, who are fed up of Tehran's meddling in Iraq and Iraqi politics as such. So Iran is banking on this as one such proxy, given that there is nobody else in the region. Precious little to show for other proxies insofar as Hamas and Hezbollah or the Assads were concerned. They're all down and out and on the ash heap of history.
Berzine, I do have another very brief update. It's not breaking news, but it's something that we should inform people of. Public safety guidelines, this from the Israeli military, has included the closure of schools, this extending until 8 p.m. local time on June the 17th. The messaging clear, a state of emergency extended. This public safety guideline also extended to June the 17th. Further escalation has been seen. This messaging potentially showing that further escalation is also expected. I want to thank our guests who have joined us, Terry Malevsky, and also thank you to Berzine Wagmar who have joined us. We, of course, are coming in to this G7 summit. Leaders are arriving, but a key topic, Israel-Iran tensions, will continue to rumble on and be a talking point here on NewsX World and at that summit. Make sure you're watching here on this channel for all the updates on both and everything else from across the world.
I'm Megha Sharma and I'm in these gorgeous locales of Cananasis. Cananasis is the location where the G7 Leaders Summit is taking place between June 15th and June 17th. The global heads of the biggest economies of the world are going to descend in this place, including the United States President Donald Trump, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. It is a summit that is going to be overshadowed by the Israel-US-Iranian conflict. It is going to be overshadowed by the Ukraine-Russian tensions. It is going to be overshadowed by the Gaza-Israel conflict taking place in the Middle East. So stay tuned on NewsX World with me as I bring you the latest updates from the G7 Leaders Summit.
ITV नेटवर्क के फाउंडर और संसद में मेरे साथी कार्तिकेय शर्मा जी, नेटवर्क की पूरी टीम, देश विदेश से आए सभी अतिथि, देवी और सज्जनों, न्यूज एक्स वर्ल्ड इसकी शुभ शुरुआत और इसके लिए मैं आप सबको बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं, बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। मीडिया के इस तरह के इवेंट्स होते रहते हैं, लेकिन आपके नेटवर्क ने इसे एक नया डायमेंशन दिया है। आपका ये समिट आने वाली कल को समर्पित है। जितने भी मैं इवेंट्स में गया हूं, एक छोटे से कमरे में होते हैं और अपने अपने लोग होते हैं। यहाँ इतने विशाल समारोह को देखना, और वो भी एक मीडिया हाउस के समारोह को, और जीवन के सभी क्षेत्रों को स्पर्श किए हुए लोग यहाँ होना, ये अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी बात है। इस टेम्पलेट को आने वाले दिनों में दूसरे मीडिया हाउस भी अपने तरीके से और इनोवेटिव बना करके कम से कम उस छोटे कमरे से बाहर निकले। मुझे विश्वास है कि आपका नया चैनल भारत की रियल स्टोरीज दुनिया तक पहुंचाएगा। ITV नेटवर्क की पूरी टीम को मैं फिर एक बार ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं।
I'm Megha Sharma and I'm in these gorgeous locales of Cananasis. Cananasis is the location where the G7 Leaders Summit is taking place between June 15th and June 17th. The global heads of the biggest economies of the world are going to descend in this place, including the United States President Donald Trump, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. It is a summit that is going to be overshadowed by the Israel-US-Iranian conflict. It is going to be overshadowed by the Ukraine-Russian tensions. It is going to be overshadowed by the Gaza-Israel conflict taking place in the Middle East. So stay tuned on NewsX World with me as I bring you the latest updates from the G7.